Greetings, horror aficionados. It is I, Pete Wright, here to lure you into the macabre world of Sitting in the Dark, where we will unveil the lurid details and chilling backstories of two bastions of terror, House of Wax and House on Haunted Hill. Picture it! A candlelit room brimming with the scent of cobwebs and shadows. Together with Ray DeLancey and Tommy Metz III, we beckon you to draw nearer, to join us in an examination of these diabolical dwellings and the monstrous secrets contained within their walls, as we explore how the filmmakers behind the turn-of-the-century remakes of these horror classics didn't learn a goddamn thing in the making. So curl up close and steel your nerves, friends. Our journey through these houses of horror has only just begun. The phantoms that occupy these residences await you, if you dare. So, hi, welcome, everyone, to the show. Tommy and Ray, hello. Happy to be sitting in the dark with you again.
Pleasure to be here.
So we're talking about these Vincent Price remakes. That's what we're doing today. We started, you, Ray, this was your idea, and you said that we did not have to watch the originals. And I was very excited when we had this conversation because I said out loud to the world, oh, I've seen one set of these and I hadn't seen any of them. That was news.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what it was that you had seen that you mistook it with?
Yeah, it was another haunted house thing. I can't remember what it was. It looked very similar.
I don't know.
They were totally new to me, all four of them. And so I did watch all four. That was not the requirement. Really, what we were doing was just watching the remakes, and that's where we stand. But to start us off, Ray, do you want to give us a little bit of backstory of your impression of the original Vincent Price films? Why you love them?
I can talk about Vincent Price all day, every day, my friend. So Vincent Price, whenever he made House of Wax in 1953, he wasn't known as a horror star yet. This was his breakthrough into horror. And so it really made him a horror name. And on top of that, House of Wax was a really big 3D movie that year. That was the whole gimmick with that movie, was that it was going to be in 3D. It's actually kind of cool to see in 3D. I have it on the 3D Blu-ray. But what's interesting about that movie, though, is even though they made it with the intent to shoot it in 3D, they hired director Andre de Toth, who is blind in one eye and can't see 3D images.
Oh no. Oh no.
So whenever he was making the movie, he really didn't give a hoot about the 3D aspect of it.
Oh.
So, I mean, you do get some...
People are just pointing behind them instead of at the camera.
Yeah.
What do you think? And it's like, that's not how 3D works.
But it is, a lot of people say that that's in his favor, because instead of making a movie like, say, Friday the 13th Part 3, where they were just throwing stuff at the camera for the sake of it being in 3D, he was able to focus more so on the drama unfolding on the screen. And it was a pretty decent success. House of Wax, it's one of my favorite horror movies. It's actually on Flickchart, my top rated Vincent Price movie. I love it. And I should also note that House of Wax 1953 is itself a remake of the 1933 movie Mystery of the Wax Museum. And those two movies, House of Wax 53 and Mystery of the Wax Museum, are very similar in plot. And they've got that same shot at the end where the woman is trying to break free from her captor, and she breaks the face mask of the villain and to reveal the grotesque face of the burn victim behind him. That's something that they kept in all three versions, really. What did you think of House of Wax when you saw it, Pete?
Well, I quite enjoyed it. I think it is it's a fascinating look at like grief and longing and love and um, the way he just sort of acts in service of his craft as I thought was just fascinating. And by the time we get to the part where it's revealed that it's a he's a what he's actually doing in the
Mhm.
with the wax, it is truly horrific. Like it is, I think it is a great example of classic horror that it
Mhm.
doesn't feel to me like a joke, right? It doesn't feel like a
Mhm.
goof. And some of the classic horrors, like if you're not in just the right mood, they feel goofy. This one feels, and the premise is goofy, right? The premise
It is.
is goofy, and yet I think Vincent Price just is able to sell it in a way uh, that I think makes it work. I really enjoyed my time with this movie.
Yeah, it was good. I just want to say right now up front, because I'll probably forget to if I don't. I'm not saying that any of these movies is amazing and a half. They're classics, but they're definitely really cheesy, but they are a lot of fun. And
Yeah,
that's why I wanted to talk about them. Now, House on Haunted Hill, yeah, you had mentioned Emerjo. Um, William Castle. William Castle made House on Haunted Hill in 1959, and as was William Castle's game, he had a gimmick to advertise this movie, and that was Emerjo, which was this basically pulley system that they used during the movie, where at the end there's this scene where a skeleton rises out of a vat of acid and is basically chasing this woman around, and it looks ridiculous because it's very obviously a skeleton on a string. And during the movie Emerjo, what Emerjo would do was a skeleton would emerge from exactly.
What a dumb word for it. Look over there.
But what Emerjo would do was during the screenings of the film, whenever that scene played, there would be a pulley system that made a skeleton emerge from the darkness in the theater and scare the audience.
That's cool.
And so that was the whole gimmick there. And that's something that William Castle was really famous for, putting gimmicks with his movies. The Tingler was another one,
Right.
where
that
we
was
had
Percepto. That was
that
Percepto,
was
and that one is the
Percepto.
the first one that I was introduced to because my mom and dad saw it, and they said that the way they said it to me when I was a teenager was you have to watch The Tingler, but just imagine every third seat during the fright scene someone gets electrocuted, and that horrified me going into movie theaters for years as a kid because I thought, what if I'm going to get electrocuted? It was just a little vibrating
Oh
buzzer.
Right.
no.
That's really all
Yeah,
It's like a
right.
Percepto
toy
was
buzzer.
a buzzer. And yeah, no, so it's movies could be very dangerous is all I'm saying. So The Tingler, and
And
that was the same year. That's crazy. Anyway, I'm sorry.
these were cheap movies. It's not
Yeah.
like they didn't spend like half a year in pre-production and all this stuff and putting all this together, and it's not like they had the greatest of effects and things to use. But the house in the original is interesting. And on Haunted Hill, uh, and its remake, of these two movies, House of Wax and on Haunted Hill, Haunted Hill is the one that stays closest to the source material, whereas the remake of House of Wax plays very loose with its source material. So uh, that's basically what you have for the originals.
One of the things that I thought was so interesting about House on Haunted Hill in the comparison, before we jump into the remake, is that it is left pretty ambiguous as to whether all of the tricks of the house are, plants versus like
Right.
setups versus is the house really haunted? And the remake is a paranormal wonderland.
And that's what's kind of crazy about the original. When you think about it, there aren't any real ghosts in it.
Yeah. And I think that actually makes it a great movie because by the time the reveal is out, it's like, oh my God, this is a murder story, right? This is a thriller.
Right.
This is not a haunted movie. This is a very different kind. This is a relationship story. It's about this couple falling apart. And I think that makes it another really interesting. I think for me, I liked this one better than House of Wax. Because I love the relationship story and the way they talk to each other and behave with each other. All of the rest of the mystery is fun, but watching how it escalates toward that final confrontation in the basement, I think is really fun, or is really intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So that leads us to the remakes, I guess.
And both of these are Dark Castle Entertainment. That was their whole plan, was to remake old horror movies. This is Joel Silver, right? This was around when like everybody had their own Blumhouse. Like what's his name? Sam Raimi had Ghost House, something like the Ghost House Productions. Like they were all trying to make it work, and none of them really were successful until Jason Blum, who sort of like figured it out. But they were all like remaking these old movies, which I think is an outstanding idea. We can talk about how well these remakes come off, but to take these old creaky movies and put money behind them and, update them with actual non-skeleton on string visuals seems like a great idea.
It does seem like a great idea, Tom.
Yeah.
It seems like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's do House on Haunted Hill since it came first chronologically. But since Tommy brought it up real quick, Dark Castle Entertainment, since that segs right into House on Haunted Hill, the conception of that movie, Dark Castle Entertainment as a production label was formed in 1998 by Joel Silver, Robert Zemeckis, and Gilbert Adler. And like Tommy said, it was started with the intention of remaking William Castle movies and doing that kind of horror movie with an advertising gimmick kind of thing. And that's what the 1999 House on Haunted Hill was going to be. That was going to be their first attempt at this. And so they got the director and the writer for House on Haunted Hill. They got William Malone and they got Dick Beebe to start working on the script for House on Haunted Hill. William Malone had done work on Tales from the Crypt, the series, and he got the idea to make it a former insane asylum whenever he was doing an episode of Tales from the Crypt that was filmed in an asylum. And
it's always an asylum. All the haunted houses become asylums at this point, I think. That's what I think. And we all, in fact, my house might be a recovering asylum.
Watch out for Jeffrey Combs. Me personally, I kind of like the idea that they gave the house a little bit of a backstory, because the more I thought about it during this watch through, the original, they don't really talk a lot about the haunting of the house. They talk about the fact that it is haunted and that there are ghosts, but they don't talk about who those ghosts were very much, or about the origins of the house or the murders or anything like that. Whereas this is all based on the atrocities that were committed by this Dr. Vannicut at this asylum on all of these people. And that aspect of it was actually based on Nazi war crimes and medical experiments that were conducted during that time. And Dr. Vannicut has, you'll notice in the flashback scenes, has like different bodies and things like that hanging around. And a lot of that was inspired by these medical experiments conducted by Nazis. Tommy has mentioned before how he's watched this movie. Tommy, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with it?
Yeah, I mentioned, I don't remember if we were recording when I mentioned it, but I got to go to the premiere of House on Haunted Hill in Westwood, California. I got tickets to it.
Nice.
And in very castle-esque way, they had a line of doctors and nurses standing out front, and you had to sign a waiver saying that you agreed to be scared to death in the movie. And they had a smoke machine in the lobby. They really like pumped up the fun sort of party aspect to it. And as a result, I've just always really had a soft spot in my heart for this movie. I own it. I'm embarrassed to say this is the first time that I saw that there was a post-credit scene. I guess I yoinked out of the movie when I saw it in the theater. I guess I was just like, well, that's done. By the time Chris Kattan shows up to pull a lever, I think I was like, okay, my bus is leaving, and I wasn't even taking the bus. This movie, I think, is extremely successful in having sort of an unsafe feeling until it doesn't. There's this one part when I think the movie changes from this is working and I feel weird and unsafe and excited to, oh no, everything just fell apart. And it has some really embarrassing, I think, situations past that. But yeah, I love the cast. I love how Jeffrey Rush is just destroying the scenery. And everyone is sort of written interestingly. I have a very big soft spot. This is a real guilty pleasure for me.
I'm with you on that, of course, but I think the challenge that I have is that I did watch these movies back to back. And the thing that I appreciated the most about the original movie was the fact that it was all staged. Like that I walk out of that movie feeling like this whole thing was this like nesting doll kind of conspiracy and not a haunting at all. And that was the threat that was unveiled. And watching it, you sort of put all these pieces together. When I get to this movie, it feels like it's just it leans into the parade of effects. And I think the first half of the movie is really great because it's all lots of Dutch angles and it's shot really threateningly, right? It's shot really energetically, and I'm with you. I like the cast. It's Jeffrey Rush is just chewing it up.
Yep.
But Famke Janssen is fantastic, right? I mean, I think that the cast is really great, but then it just becomes like that sort of the period effects parade. And because it's so this is the most haunted place ever. Like it's so much haunting that I lose the thread of what I'm supposed to be scared of in this movie. It
doesn't really. It pretends that it's following rules, but the rules keep changing. And the rules change from the beginning when the ghost a zillion miles away changes the guest list for the party. It doesn't have any rules. It doesn't have a mythology that really makes any sense. You have to throw that out, unfortunately, because then it becomes about the darkness. And they're like, what's the darkness? The erosion, then no more about the erosion. And then it turns out that that's the big bad guy. It just throws too much at things. That's why, for me, the movie falls off a cliff after I think it is a stone cold classic scare. It's one of my favorite things. And it's not really a scare, it's an eerie effect. When, my apologies, I don't remember the woman that wants to get her own infotainment show on the air, and she's walking around filming people, and she does the
Bridget Wilson.
Okay, Bridget. And when she goes up and there's the empty operating room, and when she lifts up the camera, the doctors are all there. She puts it down, they're gone. She lifts it back up and all of them turn and stare at her. That is one of the favorite creepy things that I've seen in any horror movie. And then she gets taken, she disappears into the walls, and the movie runs off a cliff. That's when everything stops working. But until then, I think it's really effective. And it's neat. I like them. The thing about both of these movies, and I don't want to jump out of this movie into both, but the playgrounds for both movies are the star.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love an entire town being all waxed up and run like a gigantic train set of horror is awesome. And this huge, ridiculous asylum built on the side of a cliff is crazy with and everything can move around and stuff. I mean, the rules don't matter. Nothing matters. But I love the atmosphere. That's what makes it overall a little more disappointing for me, is I feel like the promise is there. And we weren't ready yet to make a smart characters, real rules that you follow. And then in House on Haunted Hill, I've never been more disappointed by a sequence than the saturation chamber. When what's his name locks Jeffrey Rush in the saturation chamber. What a great idea that you can have the director and the writer set themselves up with a play set where they could do anything. You put them in there, things start going crazy. It's the kaleidoscopy thing. And then you can have anything you want within that. I mean, all rules are off. And what does he do? He just completely bites off of Jacob's ladder. I mean, mercilessly bites Jacob's ladder, from the hospital scene to the headset that they put on him, to the blind doctor, to the shaky head. And then this director really seems to think that a nude, blank-faced woman slowly opening her mouth and blood comes out is like the epitome of scary, and it is not, because we also see that in there. I was just incredibly disappointed by that sequence, because it thinks it's a winner when it does that final thing, and that pullback, that dolly move pullback as all the air and everything out. That's an applause break. And instead you saw, so the movie thinks like, ha, look what we just showed you. We just blew your mind, and said it stole Jacob's ladder and then turned a basketball into a head. I was just so disappointed.
You know what's so weird about that, Tom? I really appreciate the way you are talking about it, because it feels like it's such a steal that it's a movie within a movie, right? That applause break pullback is a hard cut back into the movie that we've been watching.
Right.
And it feels tonally very different.
Yep.
Not just as an aside, but as a short that's inside this movie that we're supposed to get a separate kind of feeling about. And I think that's probably right where I sort of start falling apart too. Like it becomes less of a movie. And I think it takes me back to something that Ray said when we were first kind of thinking about why we wanted to talk about these movies. It was, I think, Ray, check me when I start lying, you said that it's so interesting that they have these two original Vincent Price movies and the remakes are appreciably different films, right? Like they took these movies and made different movies out of this concept, and they're still sort of considered remakes, but remake adjacent maybe. I think this is one of the things that makes House on Haunted Hill remake adjacent, because that's when it goes from this is a relationship falling apart to this is the diabolical darkness of our legacy coming back to avenge itself, right? It is an interesting conceit, and all of these concepts jammed into the same movie didn't fly overall for me.
I totally get that. You know, I feel like they kind of at the end just threw everything into one big pot and tried to feed it to us, and it's like, these things don't taste good together.
Right.
And can I tell you a thing that bugs me a lot about movies, and House on Haunted Hill does one that really really just cements the point that they go through this terrible fight to at the very end, right? We have our final couple, right? Who's sitting out there? Was it Taye Diggs and Allie Larder, I think?
Yeah, that was one hell of a party.
Come out the attic house, and they're sitting at the very top of the thing over a 10 bazillion foot cliff, right?
Right.
And it becomes a joke.
Right,
it becomes a laugh line where they find, and I cannot, like, that is the most horrific thing in the movie, that they are now isolated on this
They're
movie,
just stuck on this
top of the thing. They're stuck there, and they play it like a laugh line, like, oh, we got all this money that we can't do anything with because we're gonna die here. Like, there is no way down off of this thing without going back into the house. And that's a scary concept, and they made it a joke, and I hate that. It feels like so of the period to me. Like, they just played it wrong. Makes me mad.
And we're at an hour.
You guys?
No, it was terrible.
Feel that?
It's like they made it chronologically, and they were like, and it's an hour 38. We're good. Good night, everybody. Take some crafty home with you. Like, there's no, I mean, they ADR, that was one hell of a party, and how are we going to get down from here? No. And it's like, oh,
and
well,
you know what?
You're not even trying.
Easy resolve, too. Yeah, it's like all you have to do, like, really, it would not be either play it like it's the threat that it is, that they're stuck there and the only way out is to go back through the house to survive, to attempt to survive, or put a ladder on the side of the place. Like, just make it a joke and make the joke that it's going to take them 5 years to climb down this stupid ladder, right? Because it's 10,000 feet high. I don't know. I just felt like that's an easy armchair fix that they just, I mean, so of the era, it makes me crazy.
You know, there is a sequel to this movie, which I have not seen, but I want to see. And I wonder if even just in passing, if they mention those two at the end of the movie. Like if
I
they
would
ever
love it
mentioned
if
if they
that
got
movie
down or not.
opens with a flyby of the original House of Wax, and it's just two skeletons holding checks. Like, that would be funny. That'd be a great way to open it.
I think
But,
if they
you know,
taped all the checks together, they could flap their way down. That's what I would have done.
Fashion some sort of a makeshift parachute.
Yeah.
But, you know, interestingly, speaking of that last scene, something that I never caught until this last viewing was that those two survivors, Taye Diggs and Ali Larter, were the only two people in the movie, the characters, who were not related to victims of
or the staff.
asylum.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you know that? That got very confusing to me. I was like, what are you trying to tell me now? There's a family tree. Who do I care about?
Because that's the Book of the
Taye
Vampire
Diggs
scene.
has this
right.
throwaway line where he's like, I was adopted.
Taye Diggs was adopted, and the what's her name?
And Ali Larter was the secretary.
Right, was the secretary that stole the invite. So they are the ones that didn't actually have a connection to the asylum.
Okay. And Ali Larter's storyline, where she pretends to be her boss, there was a sequence that they had deleted from the film that actually shows her boss, played by Debbie Mazur, receiving the invitation, and then Ali Larter taking it from her because she didn't want it. There was something in the invitation that like poked her and made her bleed or something. I don't remember.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that of the cast, I love Taye Diggs, right? I think Taye Diggs is fantastic. And Jeffrey Rush, obviously we talked about him. Ali Larter is great. Bridget Wilson isn't much.
No, she really has a small part.
Yeah, she has a pretty small part. Weird seeing Peter Gallagher show up. Sex Lies Videotape. Peter Gallagher
at this time.
He was in a lot of stuff, but I don't recall seeing him in a lot of horror. Did he do a lot of horror?
I haven't seen him in a lot of horror. I mean, I know in 1999 he was in American Beauty. I don't remember what else he was in off the top of my head. I know that it wasn't too long after this where he stopped doing a lot of film work and focused mainly on TV.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
But he's just one of those guys that you see in everything.
Ray, what are your thoughts about House on Haunted Hill? What do you like about it? What works? Are there sequences that stand out for you? I feel like you're just letting Pete and I ramble on and stuff, and this is your topic.
Sorry. Well, no, the thing that I really like about this movie is that you have House on Haunted Hill 59, which is a very schlocky and cheesy haunted house movie. And what I like about the remake is that it seems to me like they don't so much try to remake the movie as they try to remake the schlock and the cheese. Do you know what I mean? And update it for a 90s audience. Because if you watch this, it's a very schlocky and cheesy movie by 90s standards.
Right. It's not grounded.
Yeah.
At all. It's everything is heightened. Everyone is heightened from get-go.
I think it's a really fun popcorn movie for horror fans. I don't think it's one of those movies that you can have a lot of fun with, but you can't think too much about because it really makes no sense.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think that's the problem with that movie.
And what I think both of you touched on this is it has some really good performances, particularly from Jeffrey Rush, who I think really knocks it out of the park in this movie. I think he just plays a phenomenal character. And that a lot of that is him, because originally they just wanted him to play this generic looking businessman. And he wasn't digging that. And he's like, you know what? Can you make me look more like John Waters? I think it'd be cool if I was more like John Waters.
So good. And especially opening on that bonkers amusement park. Such a great grounding for that character.
Efficient ride in history. Like 8 people will go on that ride a day. But I love the idea of
it. This movie is just a hell of a lot of fun to me. It as far as scares, there wasn't anything in it that particularly scared me, but I can't think of many movies that do these days. One thing that I always thought was weird was the manifestation of the ghosts at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That whole
the butterfly melange.
It was like a Rorschach painting almost, right?
Yeah, the Rorschach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I saw a butterfly. I don't know about you.
I saw my father's penis. Is that weird?
But and apparently that was inspired by a lot of H.P. Lovecraft imagery, as well as Rorschach ink blots. And the Rorschach definitely fits in with the insane asylum theme.
I'm always a big fan of, with haunted houses, that buildings sort of become psychic batteries. And that once you get put through the erosion, then you're a part of the bad thing. That you see Vamka Farmers almost immediately start saying that she wants, Jeffrey Rush to join them. That they're all sort of this murder house kind of cabal, which I think is really, I think that's interesting.
You did just call her Vamka Farmers, right?
100%. I really panicked. What's her name? Vera Farmiga? Famke Janssen.
Famke Janssen.
Vera Farmiga.
I don't know. We'll never know. We don't have the names up in Coda. Chris Jadanska. Yeah.
Okay. Chris Kattan is in it, and I think Chris Kattan is great. I like seeing Chris Kattan.
He's really funny. For a lot of the movies, when he yells "ass,"
Chris Kattan has to do a lot of improv.
That was great. Yeah, that seems like the kind of part that got elevated during shooting. That they just kept cut to Chris, let Chris do his thing. That was really neat. And all of his hurry, I need to get out of here. That really helped set the table in that foreboding, unsafe way that I talked about that lasts for maybe like a half the movie, is his incredible fear and devastation about being locked in there. It really sets the table. Instead of just a bunch of people being like, well, that was weird. He's like, no, it's so much worse than that. That was smart.
The thing that does it is his resignation that as soon as the thing goes down, that he's gonna die.
He's drinking
that. He's like, okay, well, it's all over, everybody. And I think that the way he played that was perfect for that first half of the movie, because that means it's so terrifying that we should all just give up.
Right.
And I think that setup is perfect. I think the setup is perfect.
Agreed.
And we haven't said the words. I think we maybe have only said the words, but not in words of honor. Jeffrey Combs is great in everything he does.
I was just about to say that. Jeffrey Combs is one of my favorite actors on the face of the planet, and he plays Dr. Vannicut.
Oh,
and he I wish that he had gotten more to do in this movie, but it's, what can you do? It's kind of a small role. Interestingly, you know who they originally wanted for that role? Marilyn Manson.
Oh,
interesting.
But I guess since that didn't work out, that's why they crammed Marilyn Manson's cover of Sweet Dreams in this movie like 9 times.
9 times. Yeah. Goodness. there, it turns out there are too many times you can hear Sweet Dreams. I think we covered that. That's settled science.
And like Brian Blake pointed out in the comments, this era of horror movies really had a thing for new metal,
Oh, that's true. New metal. That's right. That's funny.
Before we
the other
move on
two bits of stunt casting, though, Lisa Loeb and James Marsters as the camera people, as the news reporters in the beginning, I thought were of the era kind of stunt casting that I thought was cute. I don't remember. So in '99, where was Marsters? I mean, Lisa Loeb was the musician Lisa Loeb. James Marsters was Angel on Buffy, and I think he was not Angel. He was Spike. On Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and had moved over to Angel, I think, at that point. I'm not entirely sure where they were seasonally, but it was fun to see him in here too.
The only other note that I have that I wanted to touch on here with House on Haunted Hill was the marketing gimmick. Just like with the original, Dark Castle Entertainment wanted to pay homage to the movie by continuing the marketing gimmicks that William Castle used to do. And with this one, they had scratch-off tickets that would be given to movie patrons that had
Scratcho.
cash prizes that totaled $1 million.
Oh.
Scratcho.
Scratcho.
That's really good. Scratcho. Okay. But you could win $1 million. That's what it.
According to the information that I saw, the cash prizes totaled $1 million, and it included stuff like rentals from Blockbuster. And Warner Brothers had intended to.
Those have no value at all.
Right. And Warner Brothers had continued to, or they wanted to continue to try to do these kind of gimmicks for subsequent movies, especially because the next one they were going to do was a remake of William Castle's 13 Ghosts, which was a 3D movie.
Right. Matthew
But
Lillard.
they just decided to abandon those marketing plans.
House of Wax.
So how did this one land for you?
I love the idea of it. I love having this town that remaking a town in its own image, but like covering everybody with wax is really neat. And when it lets the town shine and you're going through and you think you see someone in the window, it turns out to be that Eliza Cuthbert says the entire town is rigged. That's really, it made me want a town. Like I want a little town that I can turn on and do that. Unfortunately, the characters are the worst. The characters are all,
they
we
really
didn't know how to make real people yet. They're either the stupidest or the weirdest. Paris Hilton is an interesting choice. I assume, was it stunt casting in that, hey, for those of you that hate Paris Hilton, you get to see her killed and horribly in this movie? Was that like a big selling point?
Well, that wasn't a studio decision. That was hers.
To die?
No, to market her death. What happened with that was after they had wrapped filming and they were getting closer to the release date, Paris Hilton wanted to start selling T-shirts that read, "On May 6th, watch Paris die."
Oh.
And
okay.
And Warner Brothers gave her permission to do that, as a tie-in promotion kind of before the film's release. And that kind of really caught on because, Paris Hilton was a much maligned person at that point in time. A lot of people there was the whole sex tape thing, which happened, I think, during the making of this or right after they made this, but before the film came out. And there were numerous reports of people who cheered in the theaters when she died. So
sure.
Oh, I'm sure of that. That is the universe I feel like I live in.
I kind of like her having
having
agency in it, though, that she's sort of taking that and using it for her benefit. I think that's kind of cool.
Well, and that's like her whole jam. Like you see her in this stuff and it just feels like, oh, Paris Hilton is a testament to any press is good press, right? Like if anyone has turned bad news into good news for publicity, it's Paris Hilton. Like she owns that corner, and it makes complete sense to me that she would want to play with that in this way, right? She deserves a lot of credit for what she has been able to turn in her favor, regardless of what you think of her as a person. I don't spend a lot of time thinking of Paris Hilton at all, but man, you can totally see how that would be a part of her process here.
Yeah, totally.
One of the things about this movie is it has two, for lack of a better phrase, twists, but neither of them seem to add up to anything. And I'm saying this maybe I'm wrong and I missed the significance. The movie seems to think they're a big deal. Number one, that Brian Van Holt, the bad guy, that we all thought that the wax covered guy was the one that was tied up as a child, but it was the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? Was my first thing. I'm like, oh, I guess I assumed it was the other one, but they're both melting people. They're both killing people. So who cares? And then
it's a buddy movie.
And then the ADR line of that weird ADR line of the thing. By the way, we just happened to look through this file of this town that we never knew existed. And they didn't have 2 kids. They had 3. And then there's that guy from the beginning waving. who cares? I didn't like, cause he doesn't seem to be like continuing on. The town's done. I didn't know. That just seemed like, oh, we're supposed to have twists in this, but we forgot to make it mean anything. Did I miss some of the realization of that? Like,
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head.
I mean,
as far as the reveal that
Waxface's thing, like, you're not the monster, but he's absolutely a monster. He's making a wax town.
Yeah.
I think as far as that twist with Vincent went, I can only assume that their intention there was to make it look like, oh, the ugly guy isn't always the villain. Sometimes he's the victim who's being manipulated by the victim or by the villain.
And still, they're both
you said,
people.
But they're both very guilty. That's like feeling bad for Leatherface.
Right, exactly.
He still loves chainsaws.
Exactly.
Yeah, people made fun of him when he was young, and then he made a skin suit. So that's where the sympathy stops.
But this is the thing that I think the movie does really well, right? That in terms of, again, building the world of threat, I think the movie does it really well. I find these idiot kids driving through the woods, landing in the mysterious truck that they knock the light out of. That callback later is super threatening. When Alicia Cuthbert falls down into the debris of bodies and they run into the triplet, like all of that is super threatening to me. Like they built this sort of deliverance land in a way that I think works for the movie. It goes on a little bit too long. Like there are so many twists of I'm lost, twists of the fan belt's broken, twists of but which fan belt? Let's go to the house.
Right.
There are so many, like, come on with me to this place and then we'll go to this place together. And now we're in a church. Like it felt like a little bit of a rat in a maze. Like I was just trying to get to the meat of the movie. Yeah. But the reveal I thought actually worked well. I mean, I thought the twist of having both of the twins at the time that we meet them, when they first walk into the church and all they see is Brian Van Holt looking over his shoulder, like I totally missed that those bodies were waxed. Like I didn't catch that they were waxed that first reveal. Did you guys? Did you know? Like,
No.
Did you know the gimmick?
I had seen the movie before, so yes.
Well, I know, but the first time, take us back. Do you remember if you noticed? Because that was great.
No,
to me.
Probably not. I probably didn't notice that. That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right. So,
my goodness,
there.
Yeah, it's not called Church of Wax.
Those things,
yeah,
right. I think those things worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way they lingered with the, she first walks up to the house of wax, says this building is made of wax. Yeah. That's like, I don't know. Is that cool? That might be cool. All of that stuff as it sort of expands and you realize the whole town is manufactured like this, I thought was really cool. And it makes it hard to come back around to the parts that feel like didn't work for me. Right? Like, because the setup I thought was pretty good. So where did it fall apart? I think some of it it felt like the movie was trying really hard to make another Jason or Freddy or whatever in Vincent, like the mask face, like they're trying to push, this is another iconic killer. Get ready, because wax is going to be everywhere in the 2000s, that kind of a thing. And that character never quite felt threatening to me enough, right? It's even as he's killing people and filling them with wax, it just never quite got to the point of, oh, this is a new horror icon.
Correct.
I know it from the moment I see it.
I was much more intimidated by Beau than by Vincent.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
The one scene that stands out to me is whenever Alicia Cuthbert is in the basement of the gas station and Chad Michael Murray comes looking for her. Beau is talking to him and she's right beneath, but she can't say anything because her mouth has been super glued shut, which, by the way, was real. Alicia Cuthbert insisted on actually super gluing her mouth shut for that.
What? Why?
Which
she's method.
I cannot imagine wanting to do that, but Authenticity, I guess.
Wow.
But and then that scene where Bo stoops down to tie a shoe and he snips her finger off with the wire cutters or whatever it was. Man, that part just always makes me cringe. That's, I love these movies, not because they are good per se. I mean, I think they're good, but not because they have great acting or for the usual reasons you would enjoy a movie, but I think that they are just fun to watch. My favorite thing about both of them is the production design, which you guys have already touched on here. The wax museum itself is really cool. I think wax museums are pretty cool in general. And to see them used in this way, and then, like Tom said, to see an entire town, and then it's just really cool.
And then when everything starts melting at the end, it became that like a Nightmare on Elm Street trope of like when you are running away from someone and you can't get enough traction, you can't get away, that they're sinking into the house themselves. That's pretty thrilling. When it stayed like that, it was great. When it went too big and showed the obvious 90s special effects, that wasn't as great. But the idea of how do we get out of here, just keep tunneling through this wall, which is slowly becoming porous, was neat. I mean,
as the floor is disappearing out from under them, behind them, that was a great ticking clock. Like, I thought that was really neat.
Do either of you guys have a nut allergy?
No.
This is related. The reason I ask is whenever they were digging through all that melting wax, that was all peanut butter. Or not all peanut butter, but a lot of that was peanut butter. Like, there's that one shot where she's running up the stairs and her foot like kind of goes through the stair, peanut butter. When she's on the wax bed and she's getting stuck in the bed, peanut butter.
Oh my God, I would go to that
How
museum.
do they make that peanut butter hold it? Like, I imagine they just chill it, right? Like cold peanut butter.
I don't know all the details.
Now that's all I can think about. I'm going to go eat a stair.
And then another thing that I thought was cool was for the melting house at the end, the director wanted to use as few visual or CGI effects as possible. And while there was some CGI augmentation, for lack of a better word, to the scenes, they did use miniatures, a lot of miniatures for the house melting.
That's cool. It didn't look
which
like
I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that all.
I mean, there are some shots, particularly the exterior shots of the house, which definitely look iffy, like iffy computer effects added on. But I think it's pretty neat. It was neat. There's a special feature where it shows them melting wax on these miniature houses that are just each one that they made for a particular point in time in the movie, because there's like a 10-minute period at the end of the movie where that house is melting. It's just really cool to see.
There's some stuff going on in the movie. It's not, there is a slightly smarter version trying to get out. I think at times there's a couple, like there's one, let's go follow the smell. I want to see what it is. Why? That was a funny exchange back and forth when they're going to that weird, like, and then
here's the thing I've never said in my life.
Exactly.
Oh, smell that.
I want to follow
Let's
that smell.
find out where it's coming from.
And then for him to say why back is funny. And then, the dueling of the twins is overhanded, but there's, the bad guys are the twins, the heroes are the twins, one good twin, one bad twin. Obviously the overheaded way of how the twins are reunited in their original makeup when they fall through the floor. There's some, someone gave some thought to this movie and then lost a bunch of the pages.
I think the challenge that I have is that neither of these movies, in their in their attempt at remaking and amping up the threat and the gore and the horror of it, there's no icon. Like, one of the things that started this whole conversation is Vincent Price. Like, there's no Vincent Price in either of these movies. And I think that's one of the areas that makes the movie kind of feel less than to me, is that there is no one in here that stands out as the person to follow who's going to be remembered as their iconic, horror legend, Vincent Price. Jared Padalecki goes on to Supernatural. Who else? Elisha Cuthbert's got some stuff, mostly comedy. Chad Michael Murray and One Tree Hill. Obviously, we had that, and wherever. I'm not a Murray head. I'm sure he's doing fine. He's very handsome. So, but none of them live up to the memory of Vincent Price. And
No.
I don't. Maybe that'll change as the decades pass.
Good point, because the icons for both of these movies are in the title. It's the houses.
Yeah.
It's the asylum or the house. It's the asylum or the town. That is the number one takeaway. That's where you want to, and you can't really I want to just keep exploring those things, and unfortunately these characters keep getting in the way.
Tom, that is a great point, and that's something you said earlier about how both of these films are playgrounds, and it is by all rights. This is a fantastic franchise, right? This should be a great franchise. We should have more of these movies because the setup is perfect.
You can do whatever you want.
You could do whatever you want. And Wax sort of feels like The Fly to me, right? Like we talked about The Fly, and I was surprised at how The Fly as a horror icon is, is the scary thing. And I hadn't seen the movies that we watched in large part, and I thought they're surprisingly scary conceits, right? Wax, like covering people in wax, that sequence where Jared Padalecki is still sort of lucid inside the wax at the piano is damn scary.
Yep.
That was great. That was a great sequence. And I feel like so I just feel like there's so much grist for this particular mill that I don't, where are the movies after this?
Right.
Did House of Wax kill wax movies as horror movies, right? Where's the most recent wax movie? Have we seen that?
That's a good point. I don't know of any off the top of my head.
Yeah. I thought this was a fair movie just in terms of my experience with it. I enjoyed my time with it, and even as it kind of misses some of the heart of the original movie, it's just all wandering adventure horror and no heart, no real story behind these characters. We have some interesting news in terms of coming attractions.
Ruh-roh.
Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting because you remember when we started this fair podcast. It was a foursome.
Yeah, wasn't there another guy?
Right.
Some would say
there was another
his,
guy.
I don't know, idea?
Yeah, I think so. And then
he was on that Marvel show for a while.
That's right. Kyle is back. Kyle Olson he ghosted. I did tell Kyle Tom, that you were working on some sweet ghosted horror jokes on his return. So I know that we're going to need a tight 5 on ghosted horror related comedy.
Got it.
For the next show. That's on you. Kyle is back, and Kyle is going to be taking on Terrors of the Deep, and has, I think, a great set of movies for us to watch. We've poked at some of these movies in different areas in the past, and now I feel like I want to get to them. Where were they?
I can tell you what they are. They are underwater, which we discussed briefly in your Lovecraft, and then the Duel. I remember these coming out on the same day. I know they didn't, but it's a real big impact Armageddon situation of Deep Star 6 and Leviathan. People go down into the water and things go bad, and all I remember I saw both of them. All I remember is the cover of one of them where the swimsuit, the big diving bell suit, and there's just half of them hanging.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah. Was that Deep Star 6?
I want to say Deep Star 6. So I'm excited to see these because I do not remember these, but I definitely saw them multiple times when I was growing up.
Yeah. So that'll be our February pick. Kyle is back to lead us through a conversation around Terrors of the Deep. Very excited to have that happen and have Kyle back in the rounding out the foursome. We've had an empty microphone just sitting next to us. You can't see it, but the last year has just been an empty microphone.
It's right there.
And so we're excited about that. In the meantime, thank you guys. This was a great idea. And I enjoyed these movies.
Me too.
Much more than I expected to enjoy them.
Like I said, they're not the greatest, but they're much more maligned than they deserve to be. I think they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think so too. Until next time, until February, everybody, on behalf of Tommy Handsome III, Tommy Metz III, and Ray DeLancey, I'm Pete Wright. We'll see you next month, sitting in the dark.